At 6:10 on October 8, 1918, Corporal Alvin York crouched behind a fallen oak tree on Hill 223 in the Argonne Forest, watching 32 German soldiers 50 yards ahead work their way through the underbrush toward his position. 28 German machine guns were dug into the hillside above him, their barrels sweeping the forest in overlapping fields of fire. York was 31 years old, 6 feet tall, 170 pounds, a blacksmith and farmer from Pall Mall, Tennessee. He had never wanted to be a soldier. He had registered as a conscientious objector. The draft board had denied his claim. Now he was lying in French mud with a .30-06 M1903 Springfield rifle and 250 rounds of ammunition, watching German infantry advance toward the small group of Americans trapped in the valley below the German machine gun nests. York's patrol had been ambushed 20 minutes earlier. 17 men from Company G, 328th Infantry Regiment, 82nd Division. They had moved into the valley, hunting for German positions. The mission was reconnaissance. Find the machine guns. Report back. Let the artillery handle it. But the Germans had spotted them first. Machine gun fire had raked the patrol from 3 sides. 9 Americans went down in the first burst. Dead or wounded, York could not tell. The survivors had scattered, found cover where they could, some dug behind trees. Others dropped into shell craters. York and 16 other men ended up pinned in a shallow depression 200 yards from the nearest German position. The patrol sergeant was dead. The corporal leading the advance squad was wounded, bleeding from his shoulder and chest. York was now the senior unwounded soldier. Command fell to him by default, not because he had asked for it, not because he wanted it, because everyone else who outranked him was dead or dying. If you want to see how York's decision changed the course of the Meuse-Argonne offensive, hit that like button. It helps us share more stories about the soldiers who shaped history. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to York. Alvin York was born December 13, 1887, in a 2-room cabin in Fentress County, Tennessee, third of 11 children. His father, William York, owned 75 acres of rocky hillside land in the Wolf River Valley. The family grew corn, raised hogs, hunted for meat. Alvin left school after 3rd grade. The school was 8 miles from the farm. His family needed him to work. He learned blacksmithing from his father, learned to shoot squirrels and turkeys to feed his siblings. By age 20, he could hit a running turkey at 40 yards with a muzzle-loading rifle. He won shooting competitions at county fairs. People in Pall Mall knew him as the best shot in Fentress County. York was not religious in his youth. He drank corn whiskey. He fought in saloons. He gambled. His mother, Mary, prayed for him constantly. On January 1st, 1915, York attended a revival meeting at the Church of Christ in Christian Union. He walked to the altar, knelt, converted. From that day forward, York stopped drinking, stopped fighting, stopped gambling. He read the Bible daily. He taught Sunday school. He believed the Bible's commandment, "Thou shalt not kill." When America entered World War I in April 1917, York was 29 years old. He registered for the draft in June. On the registration card, he wrote his occupation, farmer. Under the question asking if he claimed exemption, he wrote, "Yes, don't want to fight." His pastor, Rosier Pyle, wrote a letter supporting York's conscientious objector claim. The letter cited York's religious beliefs, his pacifist convictions. The draft board in Jamestown, Tennessee, denied the claim. The Church of Christ in Christian Union was not on the government's list of recognized pacifist denominations. Quakers could claim exemption. Mennonites could claim exemption. But York's church was too small, too rural, not officially recognized. The board ordered York to report for induction. York reported to Camp Gordon, Georgia, on November 14, 1917. He was assigned to Company G, 328th Infantry Regiment, 82nd Division. The 82nd was forming up, pulling men from across the South and Northeast. Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, New York. Farm boys and city workers. York trained with the M1903 Springfield rifle. 5 rounds in an internal magazine. Bolt action. Effective range 600 yards. York could already shoot better than his instructors. York's company commander was Captain Edward Danforth. Danforth noticed York's shooting ability during rifle qualification. York scored expert marksman on his first attempt. Perfect score at 200 yards, 300 yards, 500 yards. Danforth also noticed York's reluctance. York did not participate in bayonet drills with enthusiasm. He seemed withdrawn during lectures on killing techniques. Danforth called York into his office in January 1918. They talked for 2 hours. Danforth asked York about his religious beliefs. York explained his convictions. He believed killing was wrong. He believed the Bible forbade it. But he also believed in his country. He believed Germany was wrong to invade Belgium and France. He was torn between two loyalties. Danforth gave York a book to read, A History of the United States. Danforth told York to think about whether fighting for freedom and democracy could be morally justified, even if killing violated biblical commandments. York took the book back to the barracks. He read it. He thought about it. He prayed. York's battalion commander was Major George Buxton. Buxton called York to his office in February. They talked about the Bible, about war, about duty. Buxton asked York what would happen if good men refused to fight evil men. York did not have an answer. Buxton gave York a 10-day leave to go home and think. York went back to Pall Mall. He hiked into the mountains alone. He spent 2 days and nights on a ridge above the Wolf River, praying, reading his Bible, thinking. He thought about his younger siblings. He thought about his neighbors. He thought about what would happen if German soldiers invaded Tennessee, burned farms, killed families. He thought about whether refusing to fight evil was the same as allowing evil to flourish. On the second night, York made his decision. He would fight. He would kill if necessary. He believed God had shown him that defending the innocent was not murder. It was duty. He hiked down from the mountain, returned to Camp Gordon, told Danforth and Buxton he was ready to be a soldier. The 82nd Division shipped to France in May 1918. They landed at St. Nazaire, trained for 6 more weeks in trench warfare tactics, moved to the front lines in Alsace in June. York's first combat experience was patrolling no man's land at night, listening posts, watching for German raids. He did not fire his rifle for the first 3 months. In September, the 82nd moved north to the Meuse-Argonne sector. The Meuse-Argonne offensive was the largest American operation of the war. 1.2 million American soldiers. The objective was to break through German defenses, cut the Sedan-Mazires Railroad, force Germany to surrender. The offensive started September 26, 1918. The 82nd Division attacked October 7th. Their objective was the Decauville Railroad north of Corny. To reach the railroad, they had to cross the Aire River Valley, then assault Hill 223. German machine gun nests covered the entire valley. Concrete bunkers, interlocking fields of fire, barbed wire. The Germans had held this ground for 4 years. They knew every sight line, every approach, every place Americans would try to advance. York's battalion attacked at dawn on October 8th. They moved through dense forest. Trees so thick that squads lost visual contact with each other after 30 yards. The ground was covered with shell craters from previous offensives. Some craters were 15 feet deep, filled with stagnant water. The smell of death hung over everything. Bodies from earlier attacks, French and German, still lying in the underbrush. At 5:50, the lead company walked into the killing zone. 28 German machine guns opened fire simultaneously. The sound was like thunder, continuous, overlapping bursts of fire. MG-08 machine guns, 450 rounds per minute, sustained fire. The Germans had pre-sighted their guns on the obvious approach routes. They did not have to aim. They just had to pull the triggers and sweep the barrels back and forth. The lead company disintegrated. Men went down in rows. Some soldiers tried to advance. They made it 5 steps, 10 steps, then the bullets found them. Other soldiers tried to retreat. The machine guns cut them down from behind. Within 3 minutes, the lead company had lost 60% of its strength. York's company was in reserve, 300 yards behind the lead elements. They heard the machine gun fire, heard the screaming, could not see what was happening through the trees. The company commander ordered 3 squads forward to flank the German positions. 17 men total, 3 sergeants, 2 corporals, 12 privates. York was one of the corporals. The patrol moved west, trying to circle around the German left flank. They moved slowly, carefully, using the forest for cover. Every 50 yards they stopped, listened, watched for German soldiers. The machine gun fire continued behind them. The main American attack was stalled, pinned down, dying. At 6:10, the patrol crossed a small creek. The water was knee-deep, ice-cold. They climbed the opposite bank, moved through a clearing, entered another section of forest. Sergeant Bernard Early was leading. Early was from New York, 26 years old, a factory worker before the war. He had been in France since June. He knew how to move through enemy territory. Early spotted movement 75 yards ahead. German soldiers, maybe 30 of them. They were not in defensive positions. They were walking, carrying equipment, moving supplies. A support unit, not frontline infantry. They had not seen the Americans. Early signaled the patrol to take cover. The Americans dropped behind trees, behind logs, into shell craters. Early wanted to capture the Germans, not kill them. Prisoners would provide intelligence about the machine gun positions. Early stood up, shouted in German, "Hand hoch!" Hands up! The Germans froze. Some raised their hands. Others reached for their rifles. Then German machine guns opened fire from a hill above. The Germans of patrol had spotted were not alone. They were bait. A German officer had positioned machine guns in a defensive perimeter around the supply detail. The officer had been waiting for Americans to approach. The machine gun fire raked the American patrol. Sergeant Early went down, shot through both legs. Sergeant William Cutting was killed instantly, bullet through the head. Corporal Murray Savage was hit in the stomach, killed. 6 privates were wounded in the first 10 seconds. The patrol was destroyed as a fighting unit before they could return fire. York dug behind a fallen oak tree. Bullets tore through the bark above his head. He could hear the machine guns, could see muzzle flashes from the hillside 40 yards away, but he could not see the German gunners. They were dug in, protected by logs and dirt, only the gun barrels visible. 9 Americans were still unwounded. They were scattered across 50 yards of forest floor, pinned down, unable to move. If they stood up, the machine guns would kill them. If they stayed down, the Germans would maneuver around them and kill them. York looked at the situation, looked at the dead sergeants, realized he was in command. York assessed the situation. 9 unwounded Americans, 6 wounded Americans who could not move, 28 German machine guns on the hill above, maybe 100 German soldiers in total, infantry and gunners. The Germans had superior position, superior firepower, superior numbers. The Americans had no artillery support, no reinforcements, no way to retreat without being shot in the back. Standard tactics said to withdraw, fall back, regroup, call for artillery, let the big guns destroy the German positions. But York could not withdraw. The wounded men could not walk. Carrying them would require all 9 unwounded soldiers, and they would be exposed while moving. The machine guns would slaughter them. York's training said to wait, stay in cover, suppress the enemy with rifle fire, wait for the main attack to flank the German positions. But the main attack was stalled 300 yards away. York could still hear the machine gun fire in that direction. The Germans were holding. No flanking movement was coming. York thought about the mission. The patrol had been sent to flank the German machine guns. The machine guns were killing hundreds of Americans. Every minute the guns kept firing, more Americans died. The mission was not reconnaissance anymore. The mission was survival and elimination of the threat. York looked at the terrain. The German machine guns were focused downhill, covering the valley where the main American attack was stalled. The gunners were not watching their rear. They assumed no Americans had penetrated behind them. York was 40 yards behind the German line. If he could move laterally, use the trees for cover, he might reach a position where he could engage the German gunners. York told the other 8 Americans to stay down, provide covering fire if possible, protect the wounded. York would move alone. 1 man was harder to spot than 9. 1 man could move quietly through the underbrush without being heard. York slung his rifle, checked his ammunition. He had 80 rounds in his cartridge belt. 5 rounds already in the rifle's magazine. He began moving. York moved 30 yards to his left, staying low, using every tree and bush for concealment. The German machine guns continued firing downhill. The gunners could not see him. He reached a position where he could see the German line from the side. The machine gun nests were dug into the hillside in a line stretching 80 yards. Each nest held 2 or 3 soldiers. One man firing the gun, the others feeding ammunition belts and watching for targets. Behind the machine gun line, York could see German soldiers moving, officers directing fire, ammunition carriers bringing belts forward, runners carrying messages. Maybe 40 soldiers in total within 50 yards of York's position. None of them were looking in his direction. York found a small depression in the ground, maybe 2 feet deep. He dropped into it, positioned himself so he could see the German soldiers but present a minimal profile. He unslung his rifle, worked the bolt to chamber a round, aimed at the nearest German soldier. The soldier was 35 yards away, standing upright, carrying an ammunition box toward one of the machine gun nests. York centered the rifle sights on the soldier's chest, took a breath, let half of out, squeezed the trigger. The rifle fired. The soldier dropped. The other Germans did not react immediately. In the chaos of machine gun fire and combat noise, one rifle shot did not register. York worked the bolt, chambered another round, aimed at a second German soldier. This one was 40 yards away, kneeling beside a machine gun nest. York fired. The soldier fell backward. Now the Germans noticed. Soldiers started shouting, pointing. They could not see where the shots were coming from. The trees and underbrush concealed York's muzzle flash. York kept firing, methodical, calm, the same way he shot turkeys in Tennessee. Lead the target if they were moving. Aim center mass. Squeeze, don't jerk. One shot, one German. He did not shoot the machine gunners. If he shot the gunners, the guns would go silent, and the German officers would know someone was behind their line. York shot the soldiers in the open, the ammunition carriers, the runners, the officers directing fire. After 8 shots, the Germans located York's position. A German lieutenant shouted orders. 20 German infantry soldiers charged down the hill toward York's depression. They came in a line, rifles at the ready, bayonets fixed. They were 80 yards away when they started the charge. York dropped his rifle. 20 Germans charging meant 20 targets at close range. The rifle held 5 rounds. He would have to reload after 5 shots. Reloading took time. The Germans would close the distance while he fumbled with ammunition. York pulled his .45 caliber M1911 pistol from his holster. The pistol held 7 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. 8 shots before reloading. Still not enough. The Germans were 60 yards away. Running, shouting. York aimed at the last man in the line. This was a technique he used for turkey hunting. When a flock of turkeys ran, you shot the last bird first. If you shot the first bird, the others would scatter. If you shot the last bird, the others kept running, did not know one of them had fallen. York fired. The last German in the line dropped. York shifted aim to the new last man. Fired. He dropped. The Germans in front kept running. They had not noticed the men behind them falling. York fired 6 more times. 6 more Germans fell. The charge collapsed 25 yards from York's position. The surviving Germans dove for cover. York reloaded the pistol, ejected the empty magazine, pulled a fresh magazine from his belt, slammed it into the pistol grip, racked the slide to chamber a round. The entire reload took 4 seconds. He picked up his rifle, chambered a round, waited. A German officer stood up 30 yards away. The officer was shouting at his men, trying to rally them for another charge. York shot him. The officer fell. No other Germans stood up. York shifted his attention back to the machine gun nests. The guns were still firing downhill at the main American attack, but some of the gunners were looking back over their shoulders now. They knew someone was behind them. They knew their infantry support was being destroyed. York shot 3 more machine gunners. The guns began to go silent. Not all of them, but enough that the American attack below could hear the difference. The volume of fire decreased. American soldiers who had been pinned down began to move forward. A German major stood up in one of the machine gun nests. He was 50 yards from York's position. The major was holding a pistol. He aimed at York, fired 3 times. All 3 shots missed. York aimed his rifle at the major, fired. The major staggered but did not fall. York worked the bolt, fired again. The major dropped. The German machine gun line was breaking. Gunners were abandoning their positions, running back toward the German rear lines. York shot them as they ran. Some made it into the trees. Others fell. The German defense was collapsing, but York did not know if it was permanent or if German reinforcements would counterattack. A German officer emerged from one of the command dugouts 60 yards from York's position. The officer was a first lieutenant, 28 years old, commander of the machine gun battalion. He was holding a white handkerchief. He walked toward York with his hands raised. York kept his rifle aimed at the officer's chest. The officer spoke in broken English. He said his men would surrender if York stopped shooting. York did not trust the offer. Surrenders could be tricks. The Germans might be stalling, waiting for reinforcements. York told the officer to order his men to come out of the positions with their hands up, all of them. If anyone tried to run or fight, York would shoot the officer first. The German officer shouted orders in German. Slowly, German soldiers began emerging from the machine gun nests. They came out with hands raised, faces shocked. They had been winning the battle 5 minutes ago. Now they were surrendering to one American. York counted them as they assembled, 32 soldiers. Then more came from other positions, 50 soldiers. Then 75. German infantry, who had been in reserve positions, German ammunition carriers, German messengers. They kept coming. The 8 surviving Americans from York's patrol emerged from their positions. They stared at the mass of surrendering Germans, stared at York. Corporal York had single-handedly attacked 28 machine gun nests and was now accepting the surrender of over 100 German soldiers. The Americans began gathering the German weapons, organizing the prisoners into a column. York ordered the German lieutenant to lead the column back toward American lines. The Germans would march in front. York and the 8 Americans would march behind with loaded weapons. If any German tried to escape, York would shoot the officers first. The column began moving. They had marched 50 yards when they encountered another German machine gun position that had not surrendered. The Germans in this position opened fire on the column. 3 German prisoners were killed by their own machine gun fire. York shot the German gunners. 2 more Germans killed. The machine gun went silent. The column continued. More German soldiers joined the surrender as the column moved through the German rear positions. German soldiers saw their officers and comrades marching with hands up. They assumed the battle was over. The Americans had won. They fell in with the column. By the time York reached American lines, he was marching 132 German prisoners. York's 8-man patrol was escorting them, but York was in command. The German officers were following York's orders. The column emerged from the forest into the American sector at 8:20. American soldiers stared. A patrol of 9 men had left American lines 90 minutes ago. Now they were returning with 132 prisoners. York's battalion commander was Major George Buxton, the same officer who had given York leave to go home and think about his conscientious objector status. Buxton met the column, looked at York, looked at the prisoners, asked what happened. York said his patrol had been ambushed. He had flanked the German positions. The Germans had surrendered. Buxton asked how many Germans York had killed. York said he did not know. Maybe 20, maybe 25. He had not counted. Intelligence officers interrogated the German prisoners. The German lieutenant confirmed York's account. York had attacked alone. He had shot 28 soldiers. When the German infantry charged him, he had shot them with his pistol. When York had killed the major, the remaining Germans had surrendered. The lieutenant said he had never seen shooting like York's. Every shot had hit, no misses. The lieutenant said his men believed they were being attacked by an entire American company. When they realized it was one soldier, they had lost the will to fight. American burial details went forward to Hill 223. They counted German bodies. 28 confirmed kills attributed to York. All of them shot with precision. Head shots, chest shots. No wasted ammunition. The machine gun positions had been silenced. The American attack had advanced after York eliminated the guns. The 82nd Division had taken its objectives for October 8th. York's company commander recommended him for the Medal of Honor. The paperwork went up through battalion, through regiment, through division. General John Pershing, commander of the American Expeditionary Force, reviewed the recommendation personally. Pershing wanted to make sure the story was accurate. It seemed impossible. One soldier attacking 28 machine gun nests, killing 28 enemies, capturing 132 prisoners. Pershing ordered an investigation. The investigation included interviews with York's patrol, interrogations of German prisoners, examination of the battlefield, and review of the German unit's combat logs. Everything confirmed York's actions. The German machine gun battalion's log showed they had 170 soldiers and 28 machine guns in position on Hill 223 on the morning of October 8th. After York's attack, 28 were dead, 132 were prisoners. 10 were wounded and evacuated. The battalion had been destroyed by one American corporal. Pershing approved the Medal of Honor. York was promoted to sergeant. The French government awarded him the Croix de Guerre with Palm and the Legion d'Honneur. Italy awarded him the Croce al Merito di Guerra. Montenegro awarded him its War Medal. York became the most decorated American soldier of World War I. York returned to the United States in May 1919. He arrived in New York Harbor on the SS Ohioan. Thousands of people were waiting at the docks. Newspapers had published the story. Magazines had written features. Americans knew about the Tennessee marksman who had captured 132 Germans. New York City threw a parade for him. Ticker tape, marching bands, speeches from politicians. York rode in an open car through Manhattan, waved at the crowds, looked uncomfortable. The Rotary Club of Tennessee bought York 385 acres of farmland in Pall Mall, built him a house, gave him a pension. York married Gracie Williams on June 7, 1919. She was 21 years old, from Pall Mall, had waited for him during the war. They had been engaged before York deployed to France. York received offers from Hollywood. Studios wanted to make movies about his actions. Publishers wanted him to write books. Lecture circuits offered him thousands of dollars to speak. York refused most of it. He did not want to profit from killing. He believed that would be wrong. He accepted only enough money to support his family and his charitable work. York founded the Alvin C. York Institute in 1926, a school for children in rural Tennessee. He had left school after third grade. He wanted other children to have better opportunities. The institute taught agriculture, mechanics, home economics. York raised funds for the school, traveled across Tennessee speaking at churches and community centers, asking for donations. The Great Depression destroyed York's finances. The stock market crash of 1929 wiped out his savings. The school struggled. In 1940, York agreed to let Hollywood make a movie about his life. He needed money to save the institute. Warner Brothers paid him $50,000. Sergeant York premiered in July 1941. Gary Cooper played York. The film was nominated for 11 Academy Awards. Cooper won Best Actor. The film made millions. York used his share to save the school. When America entered World War II in December 1941, York was 54 years old, too old for combat. He tried to enlist anyway. The Army rejected him due to age and health. York spent the war touring military bases, speaking to soldiers, encouraging them. He told them to fight with courage, to trust their training, to remember they were fighting for freedom. After the war, York returned to Pall Mall. He lived quietly. He suffered from health problems. A stroke in 1954 left him partially paralyzed. Diabetes, high blood pressure, complications from old war wounds. He spent his final years in a wheelchair, cared for by Gracie and their 8 children. York died September 2, 1964. He was 76 years old. He was buried in Wolf River Cemetery in Pall Mall, Tennessee. 8,000 people attended his funeral. The governor of Tennessee spoke. The U.S. Army sent an honor guard. The American Legion and veterans of foreign wars provided pallbearers. A bugler played taps. York's grave is marked by a simple headstone. His name, his dates, his rank. No long inscription. No detailed recounting of October 8, 1918. York would not have wanted that. He had spent 46 years trying to downplay what happened on Hill 223. He did not think he had done anything special. He thought he had done his duty. The Alvin C. York Institute still operates in Jamestown, Tennessee. It is now part of the Tennessee public school system. The school educates over 600 students annually. York's home in Pall Mall is a Tennessee State Historic Site. The farm is preserved as it was when York lived there. Visitors can see the fields he plowed, the barn where he worked, the simple frame house where he raised his family. The Army named Fort Alvin C. York in Jamestown after him. The town hosts an annual Sergeant York Patriotic Festival every October. Veterans organizations maintain his grave, ensure the cemetery grounds are kept clean, replace flowers on Memorial Day and Veterans Day. York's Medal of Honor citation reads, after his platoon had suffered heavy casualties and 3 other non-commissioned officers had become casualties, Corporal York assumed command. Fearlessly leading 7 men, he charged with great daring a machine gun nest which was pouring deadly and incessant fire upon his platoon. In this heroic feat, the machine gun nest was taken, together with her officers and 128 men and several guns. The citation does not mention that York was a conscientious objector who overcame his religious convictions to fight. It does not mention that he killed 28 enemy soldiers with precision rifle and pistol fire. It does not mention that he single-handedly broke a German defensive line that had held for 4 years. The citation is dry, factual, insufficient to capture what York did. But York would have preferred it that way. He never bragged. He never exaggerated. When reporters asked him about October 8th, he said he had done what needed to be done. When people called him a hero, he said the real heroes were the men who died. He wore his Medal of Honor only on official occasions. The rest of the time, it stayed in a drawer. York believed war was evil. He believed killing was wrong. But he also believed that sometimes evil must be fought, that sometimes wrong must be stopped with force. He had struggled with that contradiction his entire adult life. The blacksmith from Pall Mall who became the most decorated American soldier of World War I, who killed 28 men in 90 minutes, who spent the rest of his life teaching children and helping his community, try and create good to balance the death. If this story moved you the way it moved us, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about soldiers who face impossible odds with nothing but courage and skill. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Alvin York doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.